thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to In the File. Today, we're going to be talking with Renee from LinkedIn and Ash from GitHub about working better together in the file. So with that, I'm going to actually pass it off to Renee right now, and I'll let you take it from here.
Excellent.
Yep.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Morning time, right?
Listen, like I said, we're on the West Coast. I forgot to mention that. So it's still morning, still on my second cup of coffee. So this is how it's going to be. All right, Fred. So as I'm pulling up my screen here, I did want to mention that I didn't mention before that today I am releasing on my podcast, Tech Rap Queen. You can find it where all podcasts are available. I am releasing an episode with the Eddie Opara, one of the partners at the world-renowned Pentagram design firm. So you definitely want to listen to that, all the gems that he's dropping on what it is to be this amazing designer in the industry and all the cool work that he's done for companies and big names. Okay, so let's talk collaboration and working in the file. And technology is going to work, and maybe, we'll see. It worked before, so that's a good thing. And now it's going to work. Okay. So I'm going to be talking about working better together in the art of collaboration from the aspect of a researcher. So I would love if anyone's a researcher in the chat to just give me a shout. I know Figma is usually associated with designers all the time, but I am so glad that I've been asked to present because there is a power in collaboration, and it is important for other people who are not designers per se in terms of creating concepts to the fullest, that we also appreciate the power of Figma. So, all right, I love it. Love to see the other researchers. Hi. Um, I'm in good company. Okay, let's jump into it. So first, let's just talk about the word collaboration really quick, right? I think it's important that you always go to the root to things to really understand what it is that we're talking about. So our friends over at Cambridge defines it as two or more people working together to create or achieve the same thing. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up is that a lot of times when we talk about collaboration, we really just think about the work. Who are you working with, the teams that you're working with, and the individuals. But we really leave out this really important aspect here of creating and achieving. And that's what I want to focus on, and how you are able to work in the file, be in the file, and create and achieve things together. And then our friends over on Google Search, if you put it in, you'll see the action of working with someone to produce or create something. So I love these active words that really highlight the power of people coming together, the force, the energy that it takes, movement of action and creation when we're talking about collaboration in creating something. So it's not just about the work, but what are you creating? What are you actually achieving? So I always stress that in working with my partners, designers, product managers, how are we creating the best things possible, the best experiences possible? And we'll talk about how I am successful in doing that. So one thing I always talk about is systems thinking. And I think that's really important, especially in my organization and working at LinkedIn and having so many products, so many designers, products, managers to work with. It's really important for us as a team, as an individual, to really think systematically and thematically and horizontally. And so we're always in the mindset of, how does this experience affect other parts of our ecosystem? And that's just really important when you are talking about the power of using collaborative tools. So systems thinking in collaboration, the ability to analyze and assess the broader intersection of experiences within a systems. A lot of times we can get super hyper focused and in the nitty gritties of that specific feature or that specific function. And we lose sight horizontally of what's happening. And this is why the collaboration is so important. Stretch across what I used to say, stretch across the hall or stretch across the buildings where you're going outside of your box. And now we have to do that virtually. And so it's really important that we really lean in, even more so now, where you think more horizontally in how are you solving the problem? Not just for that moment, that feature, that function, but how are you solving it more broadly? And how is the design being going to really be a part of that solution? So when you look again at collaborating and think about it in the terms of system thinking, it's not just about collaborating with the people that are on your team, just navigating that one particular thing. You want to look at collaborating across experiences horizontally, that broader intersection of experiences. Next, collaboration within system thinking is about understanding holistic approaches, understanding the questions and considerations that you previously might not have explored. And that's something as a researcher, I'm always investigating and understanding. What are we missing? What are we not considering? And a lot of that is about thinking about things systematically and thinking about things broadly and not just thinking about our particular project or our product, but what are the effects of what we're trying to do on the ecosystem with our partner teams. And so in thinking about that and working in that, and it takes time, I'm not saying you flip on a switch and you're able to just do this, but just like muscle memory, you just have to keep at it and thinking about these different attributes of systems thinking and how collaboration really helps facilitate how you think more broadly about projects. So we're thinking about systems, we're thinking about collaboration, but one of the most important components is the actual tools, right? That help you, that enable you to have this collective creative process, to have this informative artifact and insight. So not only it's a tool, but it's a resource. It's not something that you just use to get the job done, but it's something that you use and you actually go back and you use it as a resource. And so that's what's so powerful about being able to understand the Figma tool. And I'm going to talk about, again, as a researcher, I'm not in there necessarily creating components. I wasn't a researcher who, I know some people were designers first, and then they made the pivot to research, or researchers who are doing a job of one and they're creating mocks. I am a pure researcher. So I'm not necessarily, like I said, creating components, but I understand the power in being able to access these components, look at these components that my design partners are creating, and this tool that really helps create a resource that allows myself, my fellow researchers on other teams, on other products, that we can collectively be in the same space and understand, again, holistically, systematically thinking what's happening and how this all comes together. So again, think about when you're thinking about collaboration, the the act of collaboration, but also the tools that really help leverage and allow you to collaborate effectively. This is one of my mantras to my team, especially to my designers, and I had to take this advice myself in terms of popping the bubble. And what do I mean by that? I have worked with designers throughout my career who are just really good about getting hyper focused, going into their corners and their labs and just being wizards, right? And creating these amazing concepts and designs and then coming out and showing the world what they have created. But it's so important for designers and partners to really co-create together, right? With your research partner, with your other designers, with Eng, and even product. Um, so it is important for there to be that visibility. I had to learn that as a researcher, as I've done my work and done my analysis and things like that, that sometimes it's okay to give people the sneak peek into the process because you want to bring people along for the journey. And like I said, designers, you guys are wizards and masters at what you do in terms of creating, and sometimes mad scientists in the things that you're creating. And I always encourage designers and my partners to pop that bubble, get out of the design bubble, and again, think holistically, think systematically in terms of the design solutions that you're creating. How does that work for the other teams, the other researchers, and how can we collab? How can we leverage what you're creating and helping other people in their work as well? Okay, make sure I didn't miss anything. All right. So yes, mad scientists, you are. We love you. Give us a peek into the lab and what you're doing, and to give us a peek into the journey. It's so important to bring people along that journey. And then F is for friends. F is for friends, but remember, Figma is your friend in this. Bring people along the journey through Figma. It is enter cheer, enter applause, yay. It is just so important that in the space that you're in and where you're designing, bring people in, allow people to see what you're doing, allow people to get in there. And what I love about Figma, and I'm going to show you as well, is that it doesn't necessarily have to be just about the concepts. You can invite people in on another level where it's a lot more, even more approachable, right? And that's why it's so powerful. A lot of times when people hear about design tools, they're like, oh, I'm not a designer, I'm not going to know what I need to do. But Figma is really approachable in the sense that if you're not a designer, like I said, as a researcher, I'm able to go in there and I'll show you, create the tools that'll help me collaborate with my partners and vice versa. And so if you're in there all the time, it's really important that you help your partners see the power. And again, allow them to get a sneak peek into your world, but also be a part of that world. Let them know that this is a space where they can find your information, they can collaborate, research is in there. And so it can really be this, again, melting pot of ideas, collaboration, and creativity. And so just some of the examples and how I leverage Figma, or our teams leverage Figma, and researchers and, like I said, designers alike. Collaborating on presentations is a huge way where we're actually in there and collaborating, again, not on necessarily design mocks and concepts, but actual presentations that become powerful as a resource in part of the larger landscape of the concepts, right? Because you have that board that just contains so much rich information. Remember what I said earlier, it's a tool, but it's also a valuable resource. Of course, research concept testing, leveraging that. And that was really where I began to lean into my skills as a researcher in Figma. And that's where the designers and I really were able to collab as I was utilizing Figma for the concept testings that I was doing with my audiences. And then remote workshops. And I'm going to show you a little bit about that. Okay, before I turn it over and show you some examples in terms of how we collab and leverage Figma with all the different teams, I do want to just showcase really quick. This is why you always have water with you when you're doing a talk. If you're on LinkedIn, or if you have your LinkedIn app and you have your mobile device, the QR code, scan it, connect with me. Happy to talk more about the points that I've been making. But the QR code, if you're not familiar, and if you have it on your device, you can do it straight from the camera, or you can go into your LinkedIn app and actually click on the search bar. You'll see the QR code, little doohickey in the right side. Scan that QR code and connect with me, or take a screenshot and connect with me on all the social medias. But I do want to quickly show you some different ways we're able to leverage Figma and really collaborate and get in there. So one of the things that we really love to do is kind of have these workshop templates ready, so that as a designer is creating concepts and they're in there, again, remember, taking us along the journey, this information is front and center and ready to go. So there's a reference point. So breaking the bubble a little bit. So it's not just about heads down and like doing, you know, putting components and everything and designing, but the designer now has access to all this rich information. And this is kind of, again, a quick and dirty template just to emphasize how it's really approachable. It doesn't have to be really robust, and we've got some really robust ways that we use it as well, which is important. But the main thing I want to illustrate here is just the flexibility of making it really accessible and really lightweight for people to understand. And sometimes that's what people need. They just need to feel like they can get in there and do something without it being overwhelming. And that's what I like about this. So this is, again, just a really simple way of creating kind of this workshop model of sticky notes and ways of capturing ideas and information. I like to create kind of a toolkit, and what I will do is create links to information that the designer will be able to get to. I'll also break out all this information, probably in bullet. There we go. Again, I said not enough coffee. Bullet form, just to have some highlights and insights that they can quickly access without having to click in. Having member quotes are readily available, but this toolkit becomes this framework of this is the information that I'm going to provide so that we can go back and access again as the designers designing along their way. And what I love about this is that, again, we can have concepts or ideas front and center where we're able to, or the designer or myself, or the product manager, are able to get in there and look at and add asynchronously, right? So we may not have to do a workshop all together at the same time, especially everyone is you know, having video fatigue. So we set some times in our calendars and say, when you're able to get in there, add some more information. So again, this is just an overview of what a kind of workshop or insights template could look like that you can help your designers think through processes, think through problems. I love to get partner teams in here as well and then say, hey, can you add some insights so that my designer is able to understand what's happening on your side of the world as well. And then also, I'll just highlight this, which I love to do. My designers always crack up at me again because I'm not a designer, but I love because we have the components. I'm able to deconstruct and create things and say, "Hey, I'm wondering like what this would look like here," and we can have these discussions. It becomes a resource that helps us think broader and again more holistically. So I was actually typing this out and I said, communicate ideas with designers in their space. But I really crossed it out and I said, no, 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 we need to change that. It's about our space. So they may be, again, the mad scientists and know all the ins and outs, but it's a space that we all can be a part of as well. So those are just a couple of the ways that I utilize and leverage Figma as part of my team, and others on my team are utilizing it to really, again, elevate and level up our collaboration, especially across a huge organization with so many different projects and products. So thinking about things systematically, so system thinking, remember to pop the bubble, get out of the design bubble, let other people in, and really leverage Figma as your friend to help connect the dots with everyone. And that's it, friends.
Amazing. That was great. I'm, excuse me.
See, have the water ready.
Water for everyone, not even just the speakers. We all need more water. The queen has spoken. uh, that was amazing, and that you're speaking to something that I feel like I'm seeing every day more and more too. Just trying to move that needle ever so slightly towards designers being more comfortable with leaving iterations, leaving their thought process there, not trying to isolate just final designs and things like that, and getting people really involved. We've had a few questions come in, so I'd love to ask you a few things if that's all right. One of the first questions we had was, when you're collaborating with product managers or other coworkers in Figma, how do you stop or avoid people making messes of your files, you know, in a respectful, constructive, collaborative way?
Yeah, putting on those constraints and really making sure, and the designers, again, the wizards help us make sure like, hey, this is locked in, you can't do this. And sometimes it's just about doing a view only access initially to say, hey, we just want you to grab this information, digest this information. And then remember, you can comment, you can give them comment access, which is really great. And I forgot to show that. So they don't necessarily have to come in and move things around. They can, again, it's a resource. Think of it not only as a tool, it's a resource for your partners to get information, consume, and get the insights that they need. And then if they have additional questions, they can always comment as well. So those are different ways because of the different, view parameters that Figma allows you to have.
Got it. So it's almost like if you walk into the room, don't just start talking immediately. Maybe sit and listen, sort of understand how things are going in the file, and then be a little
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
during
yeah,
the process. Awesome.
exactly.
Uh, we had another question come in from Aaron. As you say, and as others have said as well, design creation via collaboration tools like Figma is a group activity. Have you ever noticed junior designers leaning too heavily on the work of more senior contributors? Are there any best practices to ensure that less experienced designers are getting the most out of that or having the same level of participation?
Oh, that's such a good question. I have this really interesting just relationship with junior designers, and that I start from just telling them like, listen, you're a junior designer, just starting out, like, trust yourself. You're not going to get it all the time. Think about just the scrappiness, the error, because the beauty is in the stuff that sometimes you throw away, because everyone's trying to get to that perfect design so quickly. And so that's why sometimes they, are maybe leaning to the senior designer sometimes. But I love junior designers. I'm just like, be free, like have at it, like be off in the wild. Like sometimes when you've been part of a system so long, like you don't have that boldness necessarily. But I always encourage people, just get in there. Like, you won't mess anything up, but make a mess. It's okay to start really scrappy. Like, it doesn't have to be polished all the time. And so I just really want juniors to embrace that about their journey. Like, don't trust the process. Trust the process. It's always good to look back and be like, ooh, that's how I used to do that. Okay. Just so that you can appreciate your growth. Right. So yeah.
That's awesome. That's one thing that I wish I could always say to junior designers. It's like, I don't understand how much, I want you to understand how much I feed off of your energy. Like I need it. It's amazing.
I love that curiosity, like that asking questions, because again, I tell people ask questions. As a researcher, I'm like, questions, ask it, make sure you're asking the right question, but ask questions. It's so good. It makes everyone think a little bit harder and deeper for sure.
Definitely.
These are such good
We had a
questions.
question. Yeah, we got one coming in the chat here too, from Carlos. How do you establish boundaries when you're collaborating, understanding roles, understanding how the ideal collaboration should go in order to avoid feeling encroached upon by others?
I don't know about being in. I think that's one of the things, like having, if you go into a collaboration having that mindset of someone's going to, you know step on my toes, like that's already setting it up, in the wrong way. Like that's what I was saying, like people have to just be a little bit more open and popping the bubble. And a lot of that is just has nothing to do with the tools, has nothing to do with the collaboration. It's just understanding roles and responsibilities just before you even jump into a tool, right? And so I always I talked about this in an article that I just did, where like I just do interviews with my stakeholders just to be like, what's important to you? What's your goal? So I can really understand where they're coming from, right? Because if we all just jump in the tool and no one has insight as to their perspective, their views, then, that's where you get this feeling of, someone may be stepping on my toes. So get that understanding early and often up front. And communication is key. I think it's another part of this, right? The collaboration is one part, but the communication is the bedrock in the collaboration. So you can have all the tools that you want. If the communication is not there, then you're going to have these feelings.
Yeah, that makes sense. We had a couple questions also come in about your file too as well. So Gwendolyn was asking, did you have different pages set up for research and others to play in, or is that something that was pre-created in that scenario?
Yeah, so I tell people all the time, like, I can give you a template, but part of this is figuring it out what works for you and what works for your organization and your partners. Sit down with your partners. Hey, what do you need? What's important for you to have up front so that you can, get going or springboard into your work? What do you need along the way? So that list actually grew over time where I was just like, this is going to be, it'll be good for me to have quotes here so that designers can look really quickly to say, oh, okay, that's that quote that really resonated to help, again, springboard them into their ideas and concepts. So, there's that was just an example of a template that I've used in other kind of workshops or uh, again, giving my designer just information or where we're collaborating. So um, the information is redacted, so there's no information there, but it's very similar into what we would use.
Yeah, and Victoria, in fact, a couple of people have been asking, is that template available in the community? Is that something that people can get their hands on?
That's really good. I'll create a version of that and make it really quick. But like I said, that it's a good place to start, but I am all about creating your own. Make sure you use what works for your team and your collaboration and just iterate on it, right? Like just start off. And like I said, that was like really quick and simple. There's other ones that are super robust as well that have other things with, different like principles and things as well. So that's part of it as well. So you can literally just create a frame and have your pseudo sticky notes, and for me, trial and error, my sticky notes are a lot bigger because I just saw where people were just using, the certain dimension of the squares to make them too small. And I was just like, we're going to use big sticky notes like we would do in person as well. So yeah, just hone it into your own community of what you do in your day to day and figure out what works.
That's awesome. That's great. And one last question. This one's from me. I always like to ask this one too. What is one book or article that you'd recommend for people who are out there now?
So there's a couple of really good articles. Oh, I don't want to mess up her name. Okay, I'm gonna drop it in the chat. I don't want
Sounds
to,
great. That's
yeah, I'm gonna drop it in
perfect.
the chat. But there's an article that's exploring kind of how research is, I just read it like last week, but I'm gonna drop it in the chat. I'm gonna Google it. Such a good question.
That'd be
Um,
awesome.
but yeah, it's a really, really good article on just the evolution of research and the different ways that research needs to be thinking about how we need to work with our design partners. But really good stuff.
Awesome. Renee, thank you again so much. That was a fantastic talk. And thank you everyone for your great questions. And with that, we will move on to our second speaker. Thank you. Hey, Ash. Awesome. And I will just go ahead and pass it right off to Ash, and I'll let you take it from there.
All right. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen here. All right. Can everybody go ahead and see that? I'm going to take that as a yes.
Great.
Awesome. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about systems for humans today and just a couple practices that we've adopted here at GitHub to encourage adoption, collaboration, and contribution to the design system. A lot of these are actually similar ideas to what Renee had in her talk. So I think it's really great that we're talking together as we're kind of in the same mindset. So again, as a systems designer here, one of my main areas of responsibility is to be the maintainer for our Figma implementation of Primer, which is GitHub's design system. And when I was preparing for this talk, I wanted to talk a little bit about what it actually means to be a maintainer, but I needed to relate that to being able to set up these systems for humans. And so I took a quick search on Google, kind of like what Renee did as well, and researched what maintain actually means. And I found that it's to cause or enable a condition or state of affairs to continue. And then the second definition, which I thought was pretty interesting, was to provide with necessities for life or existence. And this one kind of makes you feel a little bit like God, but to reel it back a little bit, I wanted to think about how this applies to the work that I do and what should actually be maintained. When we think about design systems, initially it's to think about the components like buttons, and then the documents that we write afterwards, which are our guidelines, and how all of that comes together in order to create these resources for your designers to develop their solutions for the products and projects that they're working on. But as maintainers of a design system, there's actually more to that than just these things. Because we need to actually consider the humans that are part of this system. When you think about systems for humans, it's actually less about just the things. And we want to remember that it's more about systems of services and what we can do to provide to those who are engaging with our system. A really great talk that I saw at Clarity done by Alex Skugorevskia from Atlassian was Design Systems as a Service. And she said, who are the people using the design system? What do they need? Ask them that, and I promise you that is what is going to make them happy. And as the maintainer of our Figma implementation of Primer, I just wanted to know, well, who are my people? Who are the people that I'm actually going to be creating tools and solutions for? Well, initially, that's product designers right off the bat. But maybe the system extends past just product. It goes into marketing. So the brand and the site designers are part of my design system. And all the people that they touch are also people that the design system is going to touch, which makes me realize, wow, my entire organization here at GitHub are my people, and I'm helping to facilitate all of them. With this wide range of people, the next question is, how do we bring everyone together? How do we get everyone to be on the same page when you're in such a large organization? The things that I'm going to talk about today, I've actually divided up into 3 different pillars of service. Creation, education, and communication. Each of these I found to actually be interrelated with one another, but for the purposes of this talk, I'm separating them into different sections. For creation, that's about how we build the pieces with intention. We want to give our partners and our team superpowers. When I'm constructing items for the design system, I want to think how my team should feel smarter and not frustrated when they're engaging with the system. One of the very first ways to do that is to actually just construct components for clarity. As a maintainer and the one person behind the scenes making all these things, it's really easy just to make something and visually it looks like what you need. But if somebody can't use it, it's hard to understand. So taking a little bit of time to actually just name your layers is a really great way to make it better. But I think we could actually do this even better and have more intention set on the actual piece. And by digging deeper and doing a little bit more detail in the naming, you can really make your component or your piece a lot more robust for the people who are going to be consuming it. This also extends into variants that were recently launched in Figma. And just by being as clear and concise as possible with what your properties and their modifiers is going to help your team work faster and better with your components within their construction. The next piece is providing tools for your team. What are the things that you can actually do to extend the system to make it easier for consumption? At GitHub, we've offered a range of different custom plugins. One of these is to create a project template for when you're starting a project, which we've called the GitHub boilerplate. This was actually my first plugin. And so I'm pretty proud of it, even though it's a little hacky, but what it does is it really gets people to have a very good starting point for any of their projects with a cover and different pages that they may be using in their design explorations. We have a plugin to help people contribute to Octacons by being able to push their icon ideas up into our repository and create pull requests. And then we have one for changing color modes. that we're currently still working on. I worked on these last two in tandem with my coworker, Cole Bemis, who's phenomenal, by the way. And he and I have been able to create some of these tools for our team. Beyond plugins, we also have support libraries. What are the different pieces that maybe aren't exactly part of the component library, but are also useful? Like Renee had for her template, different sticky notes and whatnot. We also have provided a set of annotations and also accessibility annotations, as well as ways to mock up and frame your designs here at GitHub with browser templates. Moving into other templates that actually apply within the system, we've created the different jumping off points for the frequently used interfaces, such as the dashboard here. And again, you can see just naming things makes it a lot easier to understand and use this template. Rather than coming here and seeing that as a dashboard, but that it's just a bunch of different frames, being more semantic in your naming for your layers will just bring a lot more clarity so that people can get started right away. And all of this has been done to anticipate the needs of what people need. So as a maintainer, I'm constantly in the trenches with the design system. And when something hits me that might affect and make my life and might affect it to be better and faster, I need to think, how can this also make somebody else's life better and faster? And by doing that, by creating the plugins and creating the different tools and assets, you're able to make it a much more accessible way for people to collaborate. But you can extend that even further by actually adding notes and references where needed. So in different template files, we've added notes on what the designers and the team members can expect when they use a certain template, or how to get started, things of that nature. Now that you have all of the pieces, the next part is to actually tell people about all of the pieces, and that's in education. When we think about education, we want to be able to empower our teams, be able to allow the team to feel confident to approach the team with system thinking in mind. I love that about Renee's talk, that she kept saying, we want to think about how to keep systems thinking at the forefront. And this is what education will do. When we educate, the first way to start the education process is by onboarding. One of the very first community files that I found when Figma launched their Figma community was the Spotify ways of working. And I thought it was brilliant. I just think it's a great piece of material because not only does it leverage Figma in a different way, but it also allows new people coming into the team or people outside of the team to really understand how Spotify utilizes the Figma as a tool, but Figma for their different systems and environments. So I've taken that idea and I've actually started one for GitHub called Figma and GitHub. And again, going in and talking about where our resources are located and how we have applied Figma and the design system within the Figma implementation for our design process. In addition to that, another onboarding tip that we consistently do here at GitHub is to allow for other different workshops. This is more for introductory pieces I found within our organization. In specific, this one for the creative team. It allowed people to sit together in a close group and ask questions in a way that felt safe and manageable. And it was a really great success, and I had a lot of fun doing it with the creative team. All of these are resources that we're creating for our team, and beyond that, you can continue to go further. As you can see, a theme here is to how can you keep drilling down and getting deeper into providing more. So as you saw in the onboarding document, I had a screenshot for the guides, and the guides that I've created here are things that are simple as how to do certain things in Figma. And while there are the help docs, having something actually in your instance for your organization is a really great way to make it easier for someone to feel comfortable with the tool and the system. Each of these guides, and this one is an example of one, how to use our data plugin that my coworker Brian Lemon created for our team. Each one of these provides different instructions as well as examples. And it's a way for someone to quickly consume the information and not have to go through a long list of README files. We've also included different bits in here for different cheat sheets and how to add different variables in. And also provided examples of the given responses that you may have in your results. All of this is guidance, but when you can actually provide guidance in the source of truth, that is just another way to help educate the team on how the system works. In our Primer web library, which is the component library for github.com, I've gone ahead and done my best to really illustrate what each component is and what its intention is, but how to also use it within Figma, because using something in Figma is not always going to be how you use it in code. An example would be here with markdown tables. It's really easy to make a markdown table in code, but it's a lot harder to do it in Figma. And so instead of having designers struggle and try to figure out, oh, geez, how does this auto layout work and what should I do? Being able to set that up for them and then give them instructions about how this is going to work is a great way to have them move forward with their work much more efficiently. All of that with creation and education is a form of communicating the design system to the designers. But with communication, I want to actually focus more on how now as a maintainer, I'm going to sit back and listen to my partners who are consuming and engaging with the design system. I want them to be able to speak with the system. I want my team to feel comfortable, safe, and safe enough to ask their questions, provide their feedback, and be a part of the system. A great thing about Primer is that it is open source, but we can't be open source if we're not allowing people to actually say anything. And so when we want people to engage with the system and hear their feedback, we need to create entry points for them to be able to interact with us. At GitHub, we offer office hours. We have one that's more broad for design systems in general. And this talks about, or it provides a platform for people to come in and ask questions about the design system, whether it be on the design side or the engineering side. There is allotted time set aside every week for people to discuss that. And then in tandem with that, I actually run a Figma specific office hours for our teams. And this allows designers, product managers, engineers, anyone to be able to come in and understand just how we at GitHub can use something within Figma. I've gotten a lot of really great questions about the component library in these office hours, but also it's really great to kind of just see what others are working on and provide feedback to them about how they can construct it a little bit better or make it a little bit easier for them to get their point across within their designs. When we're facilitating feedback, we also need to find ways to start that conversation. One of the best ways that I can think about is actually in Slack. You just go to a public channel where your consumers and partners are going to be and just ask a question. In this instance, I was asking about why our most detached component was actually our most common component. And it really was able to jumpstart a conversation where you can start to see the themes that are arising from your partners and know where the system is actually maybe kind of failing, or maybe it's not as clear, or maybe it's just working, and this is a good thing. The other thing that we allow for our team to do in order to facilitate feedback is to just have access to comment right in the library files. All of our teams are allowed to comment on any of the UI component libraries, style libraries, our templates, anything, and cite any types of bugs or maybe provide any potential feature requests, such as this one where Mike's asking if we can add auto layout to this. And these different entry points really allow a quick and easy way for someone to propose or cite something without needing to go through a whole entire workflow process. So as you can see, all of those are interrelated, and they're the different pillars that we've used at GitHub to kind of make it easier for people to come together and interact with the system. And each of these different service pillars creates more of a holistic system for the humans that are utilizing our design system here at GitHub. And it really helps us to work better together. Lastly, I just want to remind you that these are just some ideas. And I love this quote from my coworker, Yeli, where she says, when you think someone's design team is perfect, it's actually not. And this is to me represents that we're all struggling with the same problems. It was really great to hear Renee's talk first, because it made me realize, like, wow, their team is also encountering the same kind of struggles and questions with collaborating and engaging with the system as my team. And so it's really humbling to know that we're all kind of like in the same space together. So with that, I want to thank you for allowing me to share some of our practices that we have here at GitHub, and for inviting me to speak today. And I am open to any questions. Thank you very much.
Ash, that was amazing. Thank you so much. That was great. That last quote in particular, I mean, I feel like that summarizes so much of what I feel about how these teams are successful. It's not you are the best at everything. It's how do you, you're the best at tackling your struggles, right? And overcoming obstacles and things like that.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
Exactly. And just as Renee said too, like, sorry to cut you off. It's,
no.
You have to find what works for your team. Again, these are ideas that have worked for us here at GitHub, and some of them actually work, but maybe not are the best, and they can continue to be iterated on. One of the mantras that we have at GitHub is to aim for incremental correctness. And so we can always continue to iterate, which again is something that Renee had spoke about in her conversation as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Great. So we've got a bunch of questions that came in. If anyone has other questions that they wanted to ask, either for Renee or Ash, now would be a good time to submit those. But let's go ahead with a couple questions that came in. Megan had asked, how do you maintain revisions as a team and assure consistency of a master or a main in your files and things like that?
That's a really great question, because that's something that I'm actually working on right now. We have a set of cadence where we're actually speaking directly to the designers, because even though we're a large organization, our product design team is, I think we're maybe about like 15 or 20. And so I'm able to just send a Slack message with like a megaphone emoji and just be like, hey, just so you know, I'm working on things. So you might want to wait before you update your libraries. That's definitely not sustainable, but we are working on a way to find a pseudo type of branching system, and also a way to be more out in the open with the announcements for any of the changes. Right now, what we've done is we've set up actually a repository on GitHub dedicated to Figma, where there's a running change log, and designers can go there and see what all the revisions were for the latest release. Thank you. That was a great question, though.
Yeah, that was a really good one. I will even actually add on to that one a little bit too as well. There's a great article that I've found. I'm going to paste it into the chat right now. This is mainly just sort of a lightweight approach to handling revisions and iterations on design files. So this is less on the component side, but this is mainly just that because we're working in a collaborative space, the idea of merge conflicts and things like that doesn't really exist. So you can be very liberal with your frame creation, with your page creation and things like that. So instead of going back and reworking an old design where the comments or the stickies would no longer make sense, just move forward. Continue, almost like the Git model of just keep pushing forward a little bit. So maybe that might be helpful for some people.
We also encourage people that if they're nervous, to just duplicate a file.
yeah, no harm. Great. We had a great question come in from Sumit around if your team member wants to add a new component. I think you touched on this briefly. What is the process there if they want to propose something new?
Yeah, so within Figma itself, again, being one of the core maintainers, I have more of the edit access, but when an outside member or partner of our team wants to go ahead and contribute to the design system, we have a contribution model here at GitHub, and one of the steps in there is to actually implement that into Figma as well as within code. If it's something as simple as like, oh, hey, I can just fix the auto layout on something, I can easily give edit access to somebody. We just need to go ahead and be contacted for them to contribute. But we try to keep the contribution model to revolve around our entire system and not just within Figma.
That makes sense. Yeah. And I like what you were just mentioning there, where you've got, there's a level of trust and understanding that other people are going to be contributing to this. So you're not having bottlenecks of ownership or anything like that as well. Yeah. That's great. Had a great question come in. What is I will just mention for a second that the primer the primer guides on the community, so that the primitives file, the web components file, and the octagons are amazing. I reference them all of the time, especially when I'm doing trainings and things like that. I'm going to drop it into the chat for anyone who wants to go check it out. Things like the getting started pages, all of the links and the documentation and everything. We had a great question come in though around was there an MVP version of this? You know, if I'm a small team or a startup with only one designer or something like that, how could I approach this, and maybe where did you start? What was most important?
Everything you see is an MVP. It's always me being like, I think this works, and I'll push it up to the community. But really, to polish it off, an MVP that started for this was just getting everything on the page and then grouping it together. Once you can group and see the themes for your components and your patterns, you start to see where they can get sectioned off into their own separate pages, or maybe where they can start to combine within different themes about how they're built, however you want to organize. Um, from there, I've usually gone ahead and referenced each of the pieces. It's a little bit different for Primer because we've already had really great and robust component libraries and documentation for our CSS and React libraries. And we also now have a Vue components library. And so to have those as references to be able to bring information into the Figma implementation, was referencing them quite a bit to add the documentation. I did try to use the actual documentation section within Figma too, but for this longer form stuff, it's just better just to get it out on the page, because I found that using the documentation section or the description section for a component is much easier for like keywords for searching for a component and things like that.
Yeah, I agree. I find the description field really useful for knowledge at the point of need. So it's almost like that smaller, more important information right as you're moving around.
Exactly.
For anyone who hasn't seen it, there's a new documentation link field now too for main components. So you can actually link directly to external documentation pages.
Yeah, I love that section, except for the fact that because we have so many different libraries, I was like, which link do I put in first?
Right. You have to choose who you're optimizing for.
Yeah.
That's good. Had another great question of how do you see how do you see the analytics, like what component is most detached and things like that? And
so if you're in organization, and you know, you can jump in here, Anthony, about if you're not an organization, there is a way to go ahead and in the admin settings and click on the libraries, or the organization settings, you can click on your libraries. You can dig deeper into where all those analytics are by clicking on each one of the libraries itself.
Yeah, and I will add on to that. In fact, I'm just going to drop an article in here for anyone who's interested. So at the organization layer, there is a lot of analytics that get captured on your libraries, because this is all you know, it's all in the cloud, so we can get a lot of really interesting introspective data, usage over time, insertions, top teams using your components, detachments, and things like that as well. So that article has some cool details around what you can do there. One last question, again from Sumit that came in, which was, have you shifted your design system from other platforms before? And if yes, what were some of the challenges you faced there?
So I don't think I'm the best to answer this question, because I came when we had already implemented Figma and had basically a V1 of our component library. But from my experience from working with the creative team when they were doing their change from Adobe and Sketch to Adobe and Figma, just bringing over the assets, you have to do a lot of grunt work in the beginning. When you bring over like an SVG, for instance, you might get random different frames and like combining different layers together. But there is a little bit more of the production work on that side. But once you get everything into Figma, it's really quick just to fix all those up and then select everything and create multiple components from the drop down in the component menu. So the great thing about Figma is that they really provide you with all the tools to just transition pretty easily.
Mm-hmm. And I'll add one thing to that too. I heard a fantastic general piece of advice from the ServiceNow team. Actually, they were doing an education thing for their own teams. And regardless of tools, so this isn't necessarily Figma specific, but when you are migrating or changing tools or something like that, take something that you know well in your old tool, right? So if you have a sketch file that you know really well, or an Adobe XD file that you know really well, or something like that, and try to bring that into Figma and recreate it. And not only will you be learning, but because you had such a high degree of understanding of how it was working before, it's a great opportunity to really dive in and learn all the different features and learn which paradigms will shift and which things will stay the same, and how you can move forward with your designs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The moment that I explained to our creative team that frames are just artboards, their entire brains were like, oh, I understand it now. And so just being able to find the common denominators for that language is a great way to start transitioning over to another tool.
Awesome. And Ash, I'm going to ask you the same question too that I asked Renee on if you've got an article or a book or anything that you've read recently. I know I personally, reading's been lower on my list than it should be lately, but yeah, anything that you wanted to share with us?
Yeah, I'm definitely more of a YouTube watcher than a reader. And so I highly recommend looking up the talk from Alex Sklarevskia, and I'm so sorry if I butchered your last name. Her talk about design systems as a service is phenomenal. If you can find it on YouTube, she spoke at Clarity, which is where I saw it this past year. That's phenomenal. There's also a talk from another colleague of mine, Victoria Leontieva, who did Communicating Design Systems, I believe, which was her talk for this year's config, and it's also phenomenal. I highly recommend watching that.
Awesome. Yeah. And we will definitely tweet out the link to the config. If anyone happens to come across the links to those talks and wants to share them out, definitely tweet at us, and we'd love to help promote that and make sure that that gets out there as well too. Awesome. Thank you so much, Ash. That was great.
Thank you. And thank you, Renee, for your knowledge. That was brilliant to listen to.
No, that was so great to be able to just blab on this. It was like perfect.
Love it. Love it. And again, just thank you again so much to our speakers, to our audience for all of your questions. This was fantastic. A couple quick notes. So this is our last live stream of 2020. So it's a little bit of that bittersweet, like last live stream, but also we can say goodbye to 2020. I think we're good on that front too as well. Thank you to everybody who joined. Future live streams are available at figma.com/events. So you can definitely go here, see what's coming up for the next year. We've got some cool stuff that we're getting lined up. If you have any ideas or suggestions or are interested in speaking, definitely reach out to us, community@figma.com. We would really appreciate that. And again, just one last thank you to our speakers and to everybody who joined here today. And we hope to see you in the next year.